Hi, I'm Jenny Walterman, and this is my Module 14 case study discussion. Category 1, what do I know? There's some key players. Dr. Harvey Smith, who's a principal for 9 years at an affluent high school in a large city. He's been there several years, like I said. He takes great pride in his reputation of having a really prestigious high school, and he only hires really highly recommended teachers, and then he has won Principal of the Year previously. Miss Robin Tate, second-year teacher. It's November, so she's about a 1 full year and 4 months into her teaching experience. She's very well educated, but has very little classroom experience. There have been complaints about her classroom management and the rigor of her course from both students and parents, and she has not successfully implemented the suggestions given to her by Dr. Smith. Also, we have the students mentioned in this case study. They're high academic achievers. It tells us that many of the students in her courses are potential valedictorians, and so they're very intense in their academic achievements, competitive with each other, yet they're having high levels of stress in Miss Tate's courses and are complaining about the workload and poor instruction. So we also are told that the parents are high-level professionals, lawyers, physicians, financial advisors. We can assume from that that they all have post-secondary degrees, if not post-baccalaureate degrees, and so they probably understand what's the appropriate level of academic rigor. It would be my guess. So when I hear about really high-achieving academic students complaining about rigor, and then the parents also complaining about it, it gives me pause to think, okay, is there a genuine complaint here, or, rather than these are students just trying to get out of work. More on that later. Okay, so then we also learn in the case that there's an unidentified email that links to an offensive Facebook page that has offensive, profane, and potentially libelous statements. There's a threat of potential harm stating who wants Miss Tate to disappear, and it's caused fear and panic with Miss Tate. She calls Dr. Smith, tells them somebody's trying to kill her. He looks at the images of the email and the Facebook page, agrees that something needs to be done, discourages her from calling the police, and asks her who she thinks it could be. She names a student that she's had conflict with in the classroom. Dr. Smith says, let's just wait and talk to him in the morning. So what do I need to know? I feel like I need to know who sent the email and who created the Facebook page. Are they the same person? Are they two separate? Did somebody that sent the email as a concerned citizen? Or is it the Facebook generator and wanting to incite her with fear? So we also need to know what students or other people have already posted on the site, made comments in response to the original post that will help us with our investigation. And then we need to know where this was created, what IP address it came from, and that will help us to determine what kind of technology was used and if it was used on school property. So then on to technology use, which I just mentioned. Is it school or personal property, and what kind of technology was used? And then policy violations. I think we need to know exactly what does the district policies say about fair use, about appropriate use, about district technology policies, and bullying. So the problems I've identified based on my interpretation of the case study is that we have a libelous bullying situation through the use of technology with harmful personal statements, potential threats of physical harm, and potential suits from parents if not handled appropriately. And I mention that because we know that these are affluent families, well educated, probably super protective of their kids, with the money and means to file suits if they so desire. And so I think that Dr. Smith needs to be very careful about how he handles this investigation and speaking with students and accusations. Another problem is a couple of situations with Miss Tate. So certainly her safety and the way Dr. Smith responded to that, her fear was a problem, discouraging her to reach out to the police, the fact that she does not feel safe at home, and the way Dr. Smith asked for suspects before he really knows a lot of technical information. I think there's problems with several levels of that. Also, her safety and notification of the authorities. I don't believe that Dr. Smith should have discouraged her from reaching out to the police if she did not feel safe. And also a safety issue of driving 3 hours one way back home to her parents to spend the night because she doesn't feel safe in her apartment, and then back. That's 6 hours of traveling to report to school the next day. There's a safety issue there of just lack of sleep. And then the academic and classroom engagement problems that we heard about with the rigor and the coursework and her teaching ability. Another problem identified is the way that this investigation is being approached. Dr. Smith's plan to speak with William Hall and his friends first thing in the morning before he does anything else, I think, is a problem. It doesn't really give him a chance to really get the facts before targeting a student, and that certainly opens him up for some criticism. And then not investigating through the district technologist first and finding out as much as he can about the technology side of things to have factual data and a reason to speak to a student, I think is a problem. And then his reinforcing Miss Tate's assumption regarding a student that she states it could be just kind of helps fuel a fire, so to speak, between the teacher and a potential problem with a student by asking for her to single out a student and then acting on that. Okay, so category 2, we're going to talk about proposed plan of action. So this is a 2-slide portion. I couldn't fit it all on one slide neatly. Okay, so plan of action and strategy for implementation. The investigation and the approach to the investigation. I would meet with key stakeholders and leadership first prior to speaking with any students. I would carefully scrutinize technology, any proof and facts prior to speaking with or accusing any students. And then I do think it's a good idea to meet with any students that did post comments on the Facebook page, because we can directly see what they said, and their names are associated with their comments, and so it may lead to more information but not necessarily implicate them on the origination of the page, but certainly is a conversation about participating in a site that is intimidating. Sorry. And then I would also make staff aware of the situation without providing too many details, but just, in a blanket. There was, an unfortunate social media post involving a teacher. If you hear any relevant conversations or facts, please report those to me. Don't question the student. Just let me know who is talking about it, and I'll take it from there. And then the next plan of action is to ensure the safety of Ms. Tate. I would want all my staff to know that I take all threats against staff seriously. Students could be blowing off steam and just not realize the impact that their words have, but it could be a student over the edge, and so I don't want to try to make that decision myself. I want to notify the authorities. Police also make school security aware, so that, if something were to happen at school, I want it to be on the school SRO's radar. Okay, and then academic and classroom engagement problems. That's an academic issue apart from the safety, but it does affect Ms. Tate's ability to do her job well. And I would assign a teacher partner for mentoring support, or I would, depending on how much advice I've given her previously that has not been followed, would possibly ask Ms. Tate to start submitting lesson plans for review so that I can evaluate the level of rigor that she is placing under her students. All right, and then my third plan of action is to address libel, bullying, and technology use in a building-wide manner. So I would review the district policies, suggest revisions if necessary as a result of this situation, and plan an assembly to address harmful personal statements that are made and threats of physical harm, and let students know that those are absolutely inappropriate. They will be taken seriously, and that I will follow district policy for discipline and consequences. Also, just do a brief review of appropriate use policies with district and personal technology devices. Also, review the bullying policy and any social media policies that may be in the student handbook. All right, so resolving the issue. always keeping in mind what is the best for the students. So the investigation resolution, I would meet individually with any identified student or students who participated in this event. I would include the parents, Ms. Tate, an SRO officer in an IT department, but initially probably the conversation would be with the student and parent. I would implement any school-appropriate discipline according to the district handbook, and I would probably limit technology use for an appropriate period of time while facilitating least restrictive environment. I would write an alternate academic plan to communicate with faculty and make sure that any technology restrictions don't impede student learning in any way. Make sure that all of the teachers that come in contact with that student or students is still able to effectively educate the student. For Ms. Tate, I would facilitate meetings with students involved in the Facebook page post, have a restorative circle to help them all talk through their issues, teach students to demonstrate empathy if they're able to, and concern, hopefully coming through to forgiveness and restoration for a full restorative circle experience. And then make sure the students know that the district takes threats against staff seriously. It's one thing to have an assembly-wide discussion, but then it's something else to make sure that the individuals directly involved in this event are aware of how serious we took the matter and how seriously we take threats against teachers. Again, that equips them to be successful in life and know what is appropriate and inappropriate and actionable in their adult world, and that they need to take responsibility for their actions and think through how to problem solve. So another resolution is the academic and classroom engagement problems, which is to facilitate restorative circle sessions with each of Ms. Tate's classes, because it sounds like everybody's struggling and lots of complaints there, and so it sounds like they need to have a reset. And so restorative circles can really help everybody to talk about what's working well, what's not working well, in a perfect world, what students would like and such, in order to help reduce stress and have reasonable solutions to the problem. I would assign a teacher partner for mentoring support, and I mentioned the submitting lesson plans. Also, resolving the libelous bullying situation using technology, review the district policy with staff and students, and have the assembly, like I mentioned, make sure that everybody knows threats of physical harm will be taken seriously, and discuss the appropriate use policy. Category 4, debriefing the problem. So what's still unresolved? What's unresolved for me, because I don't know what the district policies are, is what's the protocol for perceived threats outside of school hours. I think if there's a clear policy in place, then Dr. Smith would have followed that, perhaps. And like it's an absolute, if there's threats outside of school hours, that the authorities are called, and that's just how it goes. That would maybe help that situation. What's unresolved is what's the appropriate level of rigor for a specialty or elective science course based on the state standards. Also, Ms. Tate's classroom management, student morale, that's still unresolved at this point. And if this whole situation, if the Facebook page was not created on a school technology device, what is the scope and reach of the district policy for statements made outside of school hours on non-district technology? Okay, so what was I thinking? I was thinking high-achieving students competing for valedictorian, complaining about rigor was interesting to me, because it doesn't seem like the typical student that just really doesn't want to do any work ever. So it's also the school is recognized for a prestigious reputation, highly qualified teachers, so it seems like these students are used to highly rigorous courses. So how much more rigorous is Ms. Tate's class? I think it's more than a complaining problem with high school students. I think there's legitimate concerns there. So that was one thing I was thinking about. And I was also wondering what type of mentoring or first-year teacher supervision Ms. Tate experienced under Dr. Smith. And then what's the difference between an academic personality and a high school educator that knows how to appropriately engage with students? And then did Dr. Smith look at Ms. Tate's curriculum goals to compare them with state standards when he first started getting the complaints about rigor? And then a lot of complaining from parents and students without much improvement. That seemed to go on for at least a year, we know about. So just kind of wondering those things. That's what I was thinking. What was I feeling? I was frustrated, angry, and confused. So I was frustrated at Dr. Smith's response to Miss Tate's call, where she was afraid and felt like her life was in danger. I was also frustrated by his encouragement of the blind accusation. I was angry that there was no call for protection from Miss Tate, and Dr. Smith being okay with letting her drive 3 hours one way back home. And then there's no other mention of efforts to resolve issues in the classroom before they escalated to this level. And so that made me angry because I feel like Dr. Smith could have done more intervention with the teacher in the classroom level prior to it getting to this point. And then I was confused about if the threat came from a student or a parent, if the intent was to vent or make a statement of intent to cause harm, and what else has happened for Ms. Tate to take this veiled threat so seriously. So is there even more going on in the classroom than what's been reported that makes her feel unsafe? So what values and convictions stood out to me? Safety. It's important for my staff and students to feel safe. They need to feel like they're safe, and that's to the benefit of all students. I think students can learn in the best environment when they feel safe and they don't feel threatened. And even if I don't experience or perceive a threat, if somebody else does and they feel uncomfortable, it should be taken seriously. Even if my level of my threat barometer, if you would, isn't alerted, I need to respect how other people are feeling about a situation. And then the ethics part of it, Dr. Smith and Ms. Tate have an ethical duty to handle academic concerns in a manner that demonstrates concern and care for every individual. That's for the best interest of students. And Ms. Tate needs to take her struggles with assignment execution and classroom management just as seriously as her commitment to academic rigor. She has an obligation to listen to students, parents, and Dr. Smith, and then be self-reflective in receiving constructive feedback. So I feel like she has a personal responsibility as an educator to receive this feedback and make an effort to change and compromise. And then integrity and communication and problem solving was another value that stood out to me, that teaching appropriate communication, problem solving skills, and conflict resolution are parts of training up young adults and equipping them for life. And those are things that we really need to make sure that we're helping high schoolers to process and work through. Okay, so Ms. Tate's safety concerns and respect. This is integrity, promoting student success. Following district technology use policies and procedures, and respecting student privacy, even when dealing with discipline issues. So those are the integrity steps that I feel like I approach this scenario with to promote student success. And I think that meeting with students individually and getting all the facts prior to speaking with students and involving parents in the discussion is showing respect to students and their privacy, even when they're in trouble. And then the second one, fairness, which promotes student success. I think that I would follow the facts and make no assumptions and follow established discipline guidelines for determining consequences. And then treat student, parent, and teacher concerns with equal and balanced respect, and involve key stakeholders in the process to ensure all issues have been addressed. I think more than one brain at a time looking at a problem can see it from different angles, and that's needed when you're trying to solve a mystery or a problem like this. And then ethics that promote student success. Set personal feelings and opinions aside and respond to teacher and student concerns in a responsible way. Set personal professional goals or self-image aside to address inappropriate student behavior. So that's dealing with not alerting the police or authorities of the situation and trying to just identify a student right away in order to avoid any potential bad press. And I think that setting your personal professional goals aside in order to get to the root of the problem sets a student up for success, because it's more about equipping that student than my own personal goals or image of what I think other principals are going to think of me. And then to validate academic state and district standards, to either support Ms. Tate's level of rigor and say, yep, she's right on target, you guys need to step up your work, or discuss with Ms. Tate Ms. Tate that her rigor expectations are beyond the scope of the professional standards and guidelines for the state. So my standards and reflection are going to be posted in Google Plus community. Thanks for watching.